Right now, there are over 82 million songs available to stream on Spotify, 50 million tracks on Apple Music, and over 60 million available songs on YouTube. This world is advancing to a digital medium for music consumption. A simple, convenient way to listen to music, but it is missing something. Where is the heart and soul of music? For some, it lies in vinyl. The once dominant platform is now a forgotten relic of the past. Or is it? A BBC article states under 25-year-olds are the driving force behind the surge in sales of vinyl records over the past 5 years. And research by the ICM suggests 18 to 24-year-olds are buying more vinyl than any other age group under 50. This boom in sales shows the age of vinyl is not over and the future is looking bright.
Let's look back and understand just how important this medium was. In 1877, Thomas Edison used two needles on a tin foil cylinder. One needle made an impression and the other needle followed and read the vibrations. This was the playback feature on a phonograph. That was the world's first look at recorded music. This set in motion a chain of events that would lead to technological advancements in the field of music. From the wax cylinder in 1887 to the phonograph in 1890s and the electric microphone in the 1920s. But what about vinyl? The first records were produced in the 1930s and soon demonstrated their superiority. Yet many of the old 78 RPM records were still made in variation all throughout the 1950s, 60s, 70s and 80s. The decline of vinyl. In the late 80s, vinyl was surpassed by the compact disc, a much more beneficial medium, and the benefits were very clear, partly due to the process of making vinyl being so expensive and time consuming. That process involved an aluminum core. It was engraved with the physical vibrations of the music. This would then be used to stamp on to a soft polyvinyl chloride plastic, and that result would be a vinyl disc. But this process was long and expensive, and this process, while revolutionary, had become obsolete by the late 80s. It was much simpler to produce a compact disc. So what keeps vinyl alive? Well, for me personally, I was introduced to vinyl about 4 years ago. We lost a family member, my granda. The bereavement left a large hole, and when cleaning out his house we found many sentimental things, heirlooms, trinkets, so on. While helping with the removal of furniture, I stumbled across a box of vinyl. When I was picking up the box, I was surprised at the weight. I'd never actually experienced anything like vinyl, a physical medium. Yeah, I grew up with CDs, but they were lightweight plastic. And the first thing I noticed was, strangely enough, the smell. It smelled like old tobacco, wet paper and a musky loft. But I'll never forget that. That was like a very sentimental moment. That smell still remains in my head very vividly. This was the beginning of my collection, built upon the foundation of old vintage Beatle albums, Fleetwood Mac and a bit of Johnny Cash. The albums were an extension of my granddad's personality. I always remember he was a big fan of the Beatles and he had various albums. Look, that one back there. And it truly was a way of carrying on a small piece, if that makes sense. It really shined a light on the kind of man he was. Coming from a generation where you could not throw anything away, everything was kept and reused, There was always a purpose for something. It truly spoke to the value of these records. Yeah, time moved on, everything got digital, CDs and streaming, but he kept them. They were important. They had a place and a purpose, and gives a nostalgic feeling for what once was. Therefore, I believe vinyl is still around in 2022 for more of a meaningful and precious form of music with more heart and soul than other platforms. But it's not only nostalgia that keeps vinyl alive, it is also a cool and retro platform with a slick, fashionable kind of vibe that comes along with it. That's why it sees popularities in like vinyl cafes and kind of indie environments. It's not mainstream anymore, but it still has a charm. I've been in contact with a previous vinyl store owner from my local town. He owned Discography Records. In our messages, he explained that over the course of the pandemic, sadly he had to close his business because there was just no money flowing into his establishment. We discussed his store and he told me that his shop was a family-run business passed down through generations of his family, and now it sadly came to an end. During our conversation he stated,
Vinyl is still selling, but only to those who can afford it or grew up with it. It is now overpriced. Along with this, he said, HMV are selling Beatles albums for £51, and to a young person, that's a year's subscription to Spotify. Most tragically, he put across the point that, really, the record industry now panders to HMV and Amazon. Record shops are being charged ridiculous prices to buy records in bulk and buy records wholesale. £25 for industry shops to buy from distributors, and Amazon can sell to the public for £25. So there is no point in buying copies. Could you tell me about the relationship you have with vinyl and where it started?
I don't have a relationship with vinyl, as it's not something that I usually listen to.
What do you think about the culture? In your opinion, is the use of vinyl on the rise?
I would say because vinyl is vintage, it will always be popular, but I don't know if I would say it's on the rise.
Could you tell me about the relationship you have with vinyl records and where it started?
It's not the strongest relationship, obviously, kind of growing up in the area of the CD and that sort of thing. But especially, being a music business student, obviously I'm aware of it. And then my granddad, he actually had quite a collection. So a couple of years ago, we were going through things and finding all these records, and just going back and listening to them again, kind of rediscovered, a lot of the music he listened to and songs that you grew up listening to. So you kind of, your appreciation grows as well as you get older.
Could you describe Granda and tell me if his music taste has influenced yours in any way?
I think it has. I mean, he was a man who was, I would say, he was into his music. The Beatles that I mentioned previously, that was a huge artist for him. And again, he would be, playing it in the car or in the house. So that kind of influences you growing up, because when you get to an age where you appreciate music more, you're familiar with these bands and you recognise these songs.
Could you tell me about the relationship you have with vinyl and where it started?
To be honest, it was my older brother who kind of introduced me into it. He had a big collection of albums and stuff like The Clash and a bit of punk as well. And the first time I ever heard of vinyl was with an album, and that would have been the early 70s.
Would you say that in those days it was a hassle to put on a record?
No, I'd say it's made a process, because if you had singles, you could put 2 or 3 singles on to a record player, and when the first record was finished, it would automatically ping the next one down and it would start again. And the same with the third one. I think it only took up to 3 at a time you could put on, but it did take a while. It's not like nowadays where one tune comes straight on after another.
What do you think about the current state of vinyl? Is it on the rise or is it a decline?
Well, I think it had a wee dip there, but in the last 3 or 4 years, vinyl has certainly come back in. There's more people looking to buy vinyl, although it's pretty expensive now to buy a vinyl compared to when I was younger. But I'd like to see vinyl come back because there's nothing better than putting a record onto a record player and you can hear the wee cracks now and again as the record gets older, you know, and you can hear the crackling and the wee, especially when it jumps or it sticks.